This is Bilbao, and this is Slow TV Radio from the Meeting Point, broadcasting not only to Bilbao but throughout the world. Hello and welcome back to Round the Table number 25 from the Meeting Point here in Bilbao. Hello all our friends throughout the world, in India, in the Philippines, in the United States and Vietnam, but mostly in Bilbao. So, before we begin our discussion of the day, I think we should have the news. So, the main news this week is, Usaya?
We've got a new website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the website is www.meetingpointenglish.com.
Okay, meetingpointenglish.com. Not Meeting Point Bilbao. Meeting Point Bilbao still exists at the moment, doesn't it?
Well, not for very long.
Oh, right, then it's going to disappear. But remember, it's changed from Meeting Point English to Meeting Point... No, sorry, wrong way around. It's changed from Meeting Point Bilbao to Meeting Point English because now we're more international with all our international friends, as I say, in India, in the Philippines, Vietnam, and around the world. So the other news is that the book is back from the printers. We have the new book and we started, some of the courses are starting because some of them start earlier than others. So the Friday group has started. But I think the discussions on the topics in the book will wait. I think for the next couple of episodes we'll carry on the discussions of typical English things, yeah?
Yeah.
And in a couple of weeks we'll start discussing the topics in the book, like the future and sleep, etc. On the new website, if you go to www.meetingpointenglish.com, there is a video there of us talking about what happens at the meeting point, and there is a tour of the new book for those of you that are interested. Go there and look at that. What other items of news are there, Huswa?
Well, what about the gatherings we had recently in the meeting point then?
Oh yeah, the gatherings. Yeah, gatherings are like our normal class meetings, but they're informal events, aren't they? With beer and tortilla, normally. A glass of wine, a beer, and different people from different groups. And they've been very successful, haven't they?
Mm-hmm. The last one, the cheese, was very successful.
We had very good cheese from Gipuzkoa. Blue cow cheese from Gipuzkoa. We don't have the name. We've forgotten the name. If we knew the name, we'd be doing an advertising jingle as well. Singing songs about blue cheese from Gipuzkoa. But it was very good, which was just as well because the tortilla was quite bad.
Yeah.
We had a bad tortilla event. Shame. So we've had the gatherings. They were very successful, and we'll have another one at the end of the trimester, probably. And we'll meet some more new people because people bring their friends and spouses to the gatherings. What else? We'll continue the English background footage for your slow TV for this week. We've got some nice film of Appledore coming up and a nice bit of film of the back garden with a bit of wildlife. So those are for you to enjoy today. And next week I think there's more Appledore boats on the river footage for your slow TV entertainment.
Nice.
So let's move on to the topic of the day. So we're talking typical English things. Last week we had a big discussion on the wonderful world of pubs. So apart from pubs, what other typical English things can you think of?
Well, first thing that comes to my mind is drinking tea.
Drinking tea, yes. People do enjoy a cup of tea.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Could you like a cup of tea?
Well, I would like a cup of tea, yes. Are you offering? Or are you just giving an example of a useful phrase to say when in England?
Yeah.
Would you like a cup of tea? It's a very useful phrase. And yes, it's quite common to drink tea.
Why is it so common in England, though? I think it's more common in England than the rest of Europe.
It's more common than the rest of Europe, yeah, but it's not more common in the world, really.
No.
European people think we drink a lot of tea because we drink more than European people. But if you think about India and China and Japan, and most countries drink tea, really. So why do people drink tea? Back in the olden days, tea came from China and was a very expensive commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And the ships it was quite a long way to travel all the way around the bottom of Africa and out to China. And it was a very perilous journey. A lot of people died and ships disappeared and things like that. It really became popular in England because one of the kings married someone from the Portuguese family. And I think she was Charlotte from the Portuguese family who married Charles II, I think. I might be wrong with the king, I might be wrong with the queen as well. But it was someone who came from the Portuguese royal family, and they were in the habit of drinking tea. And being an influencer of her day, this queen then influenced all the other aristocratic people, and they started drinking tea as well. But it was a very expensive thing. Coffee was very popular in the coffee houses, especially in London. There were a lot of coffee houses, but it was for men of business. It's in the early days of banking and insurance and things like that. Around the Bank of England, there's a good documentary on BBC Radio on the podcasts about the history of coffee. And it became very, very popular incredibly rapidly. All these coffee shops opened, and all the gentlemen of business would meet in coffee shops because they thought it was a good stimulant and it was good for doing business, you see, and talking business. And they used to go to places like Lloyd's Coffee House.
Oh, Lloyd's, like the insurance company.
Yeah, the banking company, yeah. They started off as a coffee house. And then, because these people were the ones controlling all the shipping going out to India and places like that, they started insurance, which was really to do with insuring ships originally. And so coffee was really the upper middle class men of business, whereas at home tea was seen as the ladies' drink because it wasn't so stimulating, because it's not as powerful as coffee. And as always in history, things were too powerful for women, and women wouldn't be able to take coffee. Far too strong. Like so many things in the past, you couldn't let the women at it. Oh no, far too dangerous. So it was more of a feminine thing, tea, and it was seen as something that ladies would do at home. So they had that sort of very sophisticated upper class high tea idea. But then afterwards, when tea was then taken to India, and the British made huge plantations of tea in India, then the price dropped rapidly. And instead of it being a really expensive thing, it was a normal thing for most people to drink.
So when did it become so popular then?
I'd say in the 19th century. I would imagine in the previous century it would have still been fairly expensive and kept under lock and key. They had little boxes called tea caddies which were locked because it was a precious commodity. There's things back then, things like sugar and spices and tea, they were all very, very expensive things, and it was only the upper classes that could really afford that kind of thing. But later, when all the, I suppose the days of empire and that, they had all the sugar came in from the Caribbean, all the tea that came in from India, the price dropped and it became more accessible for the masses. And also in the Victorian age, in the big industrial age, it was encouraged for people to drink tea because the cities expanded so rapidly that the water supply was very unreliable and quite dangerous. Life expectancy in big cities like Manchester was incredibly low. Infant mortality was extremely high. In fact, Manchester, life expectancy in the poorer areas of Manchester, life expectancy was 15 years old.
Really?
15, not 50, 15, 1-5.
Wow.
Mainly because of the water.
Amazing.
And the conditions that the people lived in were quite horrendous. There's that book by, what's his name? Engels, the colleague of Karl Marx. He wrote a book about the conditions of the working classes, and it's quite horrific. So because the water supply was so unreliable, a lot of the working class people then drank beer, as we were discussing last week. Beer was quite weak and people could drink it, you could drink quite a lot without getting very drunk. But it was considered quite a bad thing, especially by the more upper class people. They looked down on these working class beer drinkers. So they tried to encourage tea as an alternative, because both beer and tea, by the nature of the process of making it, you destroy all the bacteria and things like that. So it's a lot safer to drink beer and tea than just water. And they say that they wouldn't have had the Industrial Revolution with cities reaching 1 million people without tea. When cities like London reached 1 million, they were the first cities to reach 1 million in population since Rome. Ancient Rome, they got to 1 million people.
Wow.
But they had incredibly well organised water supplies, bringing water in from all the mountains around. Whereas the expansion of big cities like Manchester and Birmingham happened so quickly, and they just didn't organise anything. So that's one of the reasons why you had a lot of tea in England, and it just became a habit. People became accustomed to it, and now it is like a habit, because when I was young, if we went out to the shops and we came back, the first thing somebody would say was, put the kettle on, and we had a cup of tea to celebrate the success of our shopping trip or something.
Yeah.
It's just to say that you've got home, and it's a very common thing. If anyone comes round your house, you say, do you want a cup of tea?
Yeah.
It's quite a normal thing, and it's not like, I wouldn't say it was good manners to do it. It's just something that everybody does.
Yeah. Maybe here sometimes it's like a glass of wine, or well, you can do that during the day, but
it's like a sort of security blanket. You know, when small children have a blanket that they take everywhere with them. I think tea for English people is like that. We feel safe if we have tea nearby.
That's why they always have a cup of tea if something really bad happens. Like they say, tragedy with earthquake.
If you watch those soap operas on TV, if your house burns down, the neighbour makes a cup of tea for you.
Yeah.
But it actually is like that. They would do that. They would make you a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And if you go up the hospital, if someone dies, if you're in the hospital and they have to break the news to you and say, I'm sorry, but your loved one has just died, the next thing they do is say, do you want a cup of tea? And they do. They have tea there, and they make you a cup of tea, because it's like whatever tragedies you have in your life, tea will continue.
Yeah.
It's like a safe place to go.
Yeah. What about this idea we've got of the 5 o'clock tea, like the tea time?
Yeah, I wasn't really aware of it till I came here, and somebody asked me why we always drink tea at 5 o'clock, and I thought, do we? It's the one time we wouldn't drink tea, really, because most people are finishing work at 5 o'clock. But no, it's a thing that used to happen in the old days with upper class people. If you watch Agatha Christie films, and I think it's in the films more than the books, because I read the books and I don't think tea features a great deal in her books. But I think in the films, because they often go for a foreign market, and they put in a lot of stereotypical British things, because that's what people want to see.
Yeah.
They have, the little clock in the living room chimes 4 o'clock or whatever, and the butler comes in with the tea, like right on the hour. Very precise. But no, for the majority of people, that world doesn't exist. This stuff that you see in literature and in films is reflecting a very small group of society 100 years ago.
Yeah, I guess.
And even a lot of the stuff Agatha Christie wrote about, that world that she described was the world of when she was small, because apparently when she was young, her aunt lived in one of these big country mansions with servants. And even when Agatha Christie was writing, it was with a sort of nostalgic view of past times. So she was writing 100 years ago or something like that. So no, it's not a world that we know. When people in England are talking about tea time, they're actually talking about their evening meal. Most people...
What do we call dinner?
Yeah.
Well, we learn dinner.
Yeah. It's very complicated in England because we don't have fixed names for everything, and depending on where you go and what class of people you're talking to, they sometimes use a vocabulary in different ways. So when most people think that we have breakfast, lunch and dinner. Yeah. But I think it's about 2/3 of the country have breakfast, dinner and tea.
Oh.
Because when you're at school, you have school dinners. They're called school dinners, and the women are called dinner ladies that serve the dinner. So that's quite a working class way of doing it. And when you get home, you say, "What's for tea?" "What's for tea, Mum?" So that idea of like at 6 o'clock in the evening, we're all going to have tea. It doesn't mean we're drinking tea. It means we're eating a meal.
Yeah, that's confusing, I think.
But I think it comes from the days when people drank tea at a certain time of the day, and then they ate something with the tea.
Oh, I see.
And then slowly the food took over and the tea disappeared. But the meal is called tea for most people, even though there's no tea involved. So it is a bit confusing, yeah.
Yeah, because that's not in the books, you see. Not in the grammar books.
No, but it's like I was saying the other week about grammar and pronunciation. What is in the book reflects a group of people that wrote the book.
Yeah.
And if those people in Oxford and Cambridge who are sort of intellectual English professors...
So they have lunch and dinner.
Yeah, they have lunch and dinner,
I see.
yeah. So they write about the world that they know, don't they?
Yeah.
And going back to literature, of course, the majority of writers were of a certain class of people. You didn't get many working class people describing the world they lived in. So it doesn't feature in the literature, so consequently you don't see it in the films.
Yeah.
So what people see as typical English isn't typical at all.
No.
Stereotypical, maybe.
Yeah.
But for most people that world doesn't exist and never has done.
Very interesting. Tea. Well, you can talk about tea, yeah?
I can talk about tea until the cows come home. That's a useful phrase, till the cows come home. It means I can talk about it for a very long time. So what else do you think of when you think of England then? What's the typical image that you think of?
Nice gardens with lots of flowers.
Yeah.
So, are gardens important in England then?
I think they are, yes. It's one thing that I miss the most is not having a garden. Because you've just got that. Well, for one thing, you've got something nice to look at when you look out the window.
Yeah.
You've got flowers and plants and things in the garden, and birds and creatures.
And life, really, isn't
There's
it?
life
like
out there,
little,
Yeah, it's like a little ecosystem.
Yeah.
And just having your space, your own space, and you can just go out and walk around in it. Yeah. And it's very important, I think. Because it's one of the most important hobbies, apparently. Gardening and fishing is another important hobby. But gardening, because most people have a garden.
Yeah.
Even in big cities, people tend to have even a little piece of land.
It's funny that because, England is not like a big country, is it? I mean, for example, in London, it's a big city, but how many people live in London? And you still have the houses with a bit of garden.
Yeah. There are tower blocks in big cities like London, but it's considered quite a bad place to live if you have to live in a place that doesn't have a garden. So people expect to have piece of land. People like to have a house on a piece of land. And that's why everything spreads out so much. Because London is a big city. It's got a population of 7 million or something like that. But in any other country, it would be a lot smaller with 7 million, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, if you have to build horizontally, like it's going to spread much farther.
Yeah.
Like here, it's all like really...
Everything's very tall here, We've got very dense population here.
Yeah.
But like in my town, it's the same, walking from one side to the other is like walking across Bilbao.
Yeah.
But the population is like 1/10 of the size or something like that. It's a very small population. And everything's spread out. You have to walk a long way to get anywhere.
Yeah. That's why people don't walk. They just walk to the garden. No need to go anywhere further, is it?
Well, that's right. Yeah, you often see people in Bilbao that just go out for a walk for no other reason.
Yeah.
Whereas in England, if they're going out, they are people who have dogs.
Yeah.
Or they're going to a shop, or they're going to the library, or they're going somewhere. They don't just go out for no reason.
Yeah.
But I suppose it's because they've all got gardens, and you just go out into the garden. And the other good thing, I was thinking about it this summer, was the fact that quite often, especially in the West Country, the weather can change very quickly. And if you're going out for the day, you're making a commitment and hoping that the weather's going to stay the same. Whereas if you've got a garden, the sun comes out, you can go out in the garden, you can do stuff in the sunshine while it's there, and if the weather changes, you just go back in again and do something else indoors. So it's very convenient.
Yeah. I don't think weather stop people doing things, but I think it's better, and you get used to just walking into the garden.
Yeah. And when I was young, we spent hours in the garden. We do have a very big garden.
Well, yeah.
This is a very big one by garden standards, yeah.
Yeah.
But, we used to spend hours in the garden, like we used to play football or, playing different games in the garden. And there were always plants that needed work on and bits that needed digging, and a bit of this tree needs to be cut off, and there were always things to do. And we had pets, we had guinea pigs and rabbits and things like that in the garden, and fish in the fish pond. So
chickens.
We had chickens, we had all kinds of things, so there's always something to do in the garden. And we had all the flowers. My mother was very keen on growing flowers. We had vegetables. And again, you have like the horticultural societies where people grow flowers, and there's lots of competitions as well. If you're ever in England in small villages in the summer, at the end of the summer, they often have the village show. And people do little arrangements of flowers and things like that.
Nice.
And they have vegetable competitions.
Yeah.
The longest runner bean, or the biggest courgette, or the best plate of 3 onions. They put 3 onions on a plate, and some old men come along and examine them.
Drinking tea.
Yeah, they do drink tea there as well. But they always have to have tea facilities. Well, people would be outraged if they went there and there was no tea. And a bit of cake as well. You've got to have a bit of cake with your tea.
Homemade cake.
Homemade cake is very important.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, so gardens are wonderful things, and it's just a nice thing to have outside your house, and you just go out and you can potter. That's a good word. To potter is to work, but it's not intensive work. It's doing a little bit here and a little bit there, and just when you've got a garden, there's always little things that you can do continuously. And that is to potter. You're not involved in any one major task. You're just doing a little bit of work on lots of different things at the same time.
I guess that's like a therapy, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you are very stressed and then you spend some time in the garden and you are just like focus on doing little things like that.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I think it is a good therapy for a lot of people. They find there is always that sort of calm feeling, because you're also, as we discussed in other situations before, that we're not really connected to seasons anymore. Now we live in this, office environment and all that kind of stuff. And when you've got a garden, you're growing vegetables or flowers or anything, you're thinking about what will be. You can put a plant in the garden and you're thinking what it will be in 5 years' time. You're not thinking about what it is now. You're planning for the future. And if you're growing vegetables, you're saving your beans from one year, and then you know that in March or something like that, you've got to put them in the little pots, and then at this part of the year they have to go into the garden. And everything is planned out on a long-term cycle. There's a long-term schedule that you're thinking about.
Yeah, and then who knows, maybe those trees might become something really good, like a spoon or a bowl for the neighbor.
Oh yeah. When the trees die, we have to convert them into something else. Yeah. Oh, no wood goes to waste. No.
I really like that. And this summer, when your dad made this bowl from the apple tree from the neighbor.
Oh yeah.
And she gave it to the tallest sunflower. Yeah.
That's right. In the street, they had a competition to grow sunflowers. Yeah. And I think they just gave everybody like 3 sunflower seeds or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And so they had a competition to see who could grow the tallest one. And one of the neighbours had an apple tree that died. And my father got the wood and converted it into that bowl, And so one of the neighbours won a wooden bowl.
Yeah, but she was so pleased.
Yeah. She was really, really happy with that present, wasn't she? She was almost in tears.
Yeah.
She just kept stroking it and she go, oh, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's really good when you give someone a present and they're that pleased with it.
Yeah.
Especially when you've made it yourself.
That's
you find
really
that
good.
really has an impact when you can give someone a present that you've made. It's like when I made that totem pole in the garden. I have a totem pole in my garden, in my father's garden now. But when my uncle saw it, he thought it was amazing. He thought it was a fantastic idea having a totem pole. And then the next time he came to visit, I showed him the second totem pole that I made, a smaller one, which he thought was great. And then I said, well, that one's for you. You're taking that home for your garden. Oh, he was so happy.
Yeah.
He just spent the whole weekend in the garden looking at the totem pole. Going, that's good, that is. That's good. I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, but it's very good. And especially if you can make things and someone now gives you something that is made by them. It's really like amazing.
Yeah. But then if you've got gardens as well, there's a lot of people... they trade vegetables and things like that. Because even when we had the allotment in the town, I better explain what the allotment is. The allotment is a piece of land for growing vegetables, but it's not your garden. It's somewhere, it's not around your house. You go somewhere to it. And normally it's they are allotted by the local council. And you rent a piece of land for a fixed price every year. But normally you get about 20 gardens altogether. And you find that one year your onions are amazing, but you've got no beans. But the neighbour has amazing beans and no onions. And they plant them at the same time. It's the same weather, but for some reason something happens. They put them in the week before, or it's a different type of bean or something like that. And there's lots of trading that goes on. And everyone helps each other out. And gardeners love giving advice as well. They're always, they love to help out and give you plants. There's lots of, I can let you have some plants for your garden. Because it's quite easy to multiply them. Because a lot of plants grow, they spread out and get bigger, and you can cut half of it out and give it to a friend. So again, when we used to walk around the garden with my father, when he gives the full tour, it takes about half an hour to walk around, and every plant has a story of where it came from. And this was one that your mother got for her birthday, and this is another one that we found when we went to this place. And you can take cuttings. It's called a cutting when you take a little piece of a plant and you can put it in the ground and grow a new plant. And they visited a country house, a big estate, and it was owned by Prince Charles, now King Charles. And my father stole a bit of this plant and grew it in the garden. So now he's got the bush in the garden. And he's very proud. This is the bush that I stole from the king.
He might be listening.
Yeah, he might be going to the tower. He'll be rowing in the boat through Traitor's Gates to the tower. Yeah.
It's very good. It's very good things, Carl.
Yeah. And of course, all the wildlife, as we said at the beginning. A lot of people have bird tables and they feed the birds. And you can just sit there looking out the window, looking out the living room window and looking at all the different types of birds. And sometimes you get all the sparrows, which are the little brown ones that are very common. Blackbirds, which are the black ones, surprisingly. Well, I think that's all we have time for this week, Ursula.
Yeah, very interesting.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Discussing gardens and tea. Yes, very important things in life. And next week we'll be back to discuss more typical English things, or maybe stereotypical English things that don't really exist. Not in the modern world. But anyway, no time for what's the difference. No time for interesting word this week. So, everybody, have a good week. Until next week.
Bye.
Bye.